my category I described it as the fruit salad category because, you know, like most of the other executive jury had very straightforward categories like film. I had PSA, I had outdoor, I had diverse insights, and I had radio. I kind of feel like it's all the categories that nobody else wanted to judge. I've got all of them. So it was a challenging first day of judging. We went through subcategories, and you know, that in itself caused a lot of debate amongst our jury because there were so many subcategories within categories. So it was a bit like a kind of a maze that you can get lost in quite easily. So for instance, public service, there were 8 subcategories in public service. So, you know, from the point of view of working through all of that, that was a big undertaking. I don't think I've ever been, I judged at Cannes this year, and there was quite a bit of pre-judging. I mean, that is part for the course now. Pre-judging is part of what we do, otherwise we'd be here for weeks. Obviously with AdStars, I can't remember the number. It's something staggering like 20,000 entries because it's free and there's a cash prize at the end of it. Everyone's going, right, I'm going to enter AdStars. And so I think one of the frustrating things for me was so much pre-judging had happened to the point where there was a point score, there were, you know, X amount of Grand Prix, X amount of golds, that you respect the pre-judging, but ultimately you wouldn't be a jury if you couldn't go through all of that work and look at it again and go, okay, have the right decisions been made? Now I have to say, I don't think we changed an awful lot, except really when we got to the kind of the serious metal. Advertising award shows have a cycle. You know, there's and it's a continual kind of updated cycle. So what you do, it's a bit like being on a sushi train. You go, I can see all those pieces of sushi go by and I've had those before, and then go, oh, there's a new bit, and you kind of dive in on that. And I think that's part of the challenge of being a good jury, is to not let the emotion of going, okay, that's won so many golds at Cannes, so therefore we have to give it X amount of golds too. You have to look at it in the context of what you have. So when your sushi train comes round and you've got all of these lovely new dishes, as well as the favorites, you go, well, do I want to try the new one? So that's a really tortured analogy, and I'm sorry. But I guess from my perspective is that when you do a jury, you have to appraise what you have in front of you. You know, I had several people say, but that won a silver at Cannes, or that won a gold at Cannes. It might have been their own work, I don't know. But I kind of go, it doesn't matter what it won. You know, if you want to do it that way, why don't we just take all of the Cannes work and just take all of the Cannes results and kind of get rid of everything that hasn't been at Cannes? But, you know, this is about Busan. And one of the things I really love about this show, and I've always been drawn to, is the fact that it's free to enter. I'm a big believer, actually, that I think the way that award shows are geared these days is that it's a high stakes game. Margins are being cut in agencies left, right, and centre. You know, the days of agencies making huge profit on productions, on, you know, websites, etc., are long gone. So it's not like you have a huge amount of fat to deal with, you know. And I hate to bring the conversation down, but that's the reality of it. So for me, what I love about AdStars is that it's democratized award shows. It's like going, hey, if you've got a tiny little shop in Manila doing, you know, you've got 2 clients and you can never afford to enter D&AD because it's £650, throw it all at AdStars and you never know. So, you know, and I think that's my, one of the things I've really love about it. And also it's world class. The work that is here it's great work, you know. And yes, you will have seen with the Grand Prix that Palau Pledge, yes, once again it wins a Grand Prix. Well, it's pretty hard to beat Palau Pledge. But, you know, there's a piece of work that has also won a Grand Prix for Coke that I judged in Cannes, that my jury, and I was on the radio jury, and it's a radio campaign, and it didn't win the Grand Prix at Cannes. And, you know, there was a lot of debate about it being, it's the 1,000 Names. So it's basically an extension. This is one of the things I really respect about it, is that Coke obviously have done some very clever things in the last few years, one of them being putting names on cans. It's an extension of that idea whereby there are basically over 1,000 songs dedicated to 1,000 different names. So you can essentially have a song, your own song, sung to you by Coke. And it's lovely. and it's personalized, and it went crazy on social. And I really respect work like that, because that's a huge client who's already done some good stuff. And I also respect my jury for seeing and being grown up enough to realize that actually to take something that's good and then make it great without starting again is something that's quite rare in advertising. You know, I get very frustrated by new marketing people coming into certain brands and going, whatever happened in the past is irrelevant. It's that kind of Pol Pot thing, you know, like, well, without the genocide, sorry. But it's, you know, like, it's start again. History starts now. I'm making history. And then you get this ridiculous thing with brands, where brands are successful and brands are not successful, and brands are successful. No one makes the correlation that it's because what's happening is that you've got people who are sort of, you know, wanting to create their own history with that brand. And I think sometimes brands can benefit from just a lovely build. So that's why I like Coke. I think right now we're in an interesting place where, you know, big brands want to be behaving in a good way. So I guess now we're in the era of what is commonly known as goodvertising, which is big brands want to do good. So they'll go, hello, well, here we are. We are a brand that sells, I saw a few this time around. We're a brand that sells sanitary towels. So we're going to basically, we're going to help women who are prostitutes in India on the 3 days that they have their period is the only time they can't actually work. So we're going to actually, seriously, so we're going to help them by organizing 3-day work modules so that they can find new careers. Now, I think that's genius. But it also, that is something that would never have existed 10 years ago. So I think brands realize, they've woken up to the effect that actually, you know, brand love only happens if you do more than that it says on the packaging. If you're just a sanitary towel, you're a sanitary towel. If you are and it's J&J, I think you did this, you know, if you act like a brand that really cares about human beings, then I think that's great. And unfortunately, everyone's doing it now. So, you know, and also there's that technology piece. So you go, big brand, cause, technology equals gold line. It's become so predictable. And I hate, that's one of the things I don't like about awards. I don't hate, I just don't like it about awards. The fact that we're kind of like sheep. We all follow in a certain direction. So for me, the work that doesn't behave in that way is also the work that I always kind of gravitate toward, because it's people who aren't afraid to just do their own thing. I think a really good example, and I'll talk about it tomorrow at the panel, it came out of Australia. So it's a university called Monash University, which is a very big university in Australia. They came up with an idea that was very much based for the welfare of their students. That unfortunately, there's a huge issue, well, around the world, but actually it's quite prevalent in Australia, of that kind of people having their drinks spiked. And girls were basically increasingly worried about going out and you know, maybe it's a good thing that they don't drink. You know, I've got 2 daughters. There's many a times I wish they hadn't drunk so much, but now they developed this lovely little thing, right? So essentially, when you go out and you go to a festival, you have lots of wristbands. Yes. This is just another one of those. It's a paper one, and all you need to do is you take a little drop of your drink and you put it on a little circle, and it tells you instantly whether your drink has been spiked. Now, for me, I look at that brand, which is a university brand. It's not trying to tell somebody to come and study here because we're a great campus and we do great degrees. It's actually saying, we want our students to be safe. We want to develop some smart technology, and we want everyone to know about it, and we want to gift that technology to the world, which is what they're doing. So for me, that's a brand behaving in a way that I wish all brands behaved like. I'm absolutely not down on award shows at all. I think for me, it's a privilege to come to award shows. You get to hang with amazing judges, you know, and talk to people from all over the world. You understand more about different cultures. I mean, you know, advertising reflects the culture of the country it comes from. So you go, oh, I didn't know that about Puerto Rico, that that they solved a big political debate in a Burger King, you know. So you kind of get that lovely, you know, like you dip into culture. So I think award shows have huge value for that reason. I'm just, maybe there are too many. Maybe what needs to happen is that award shows need to stop thinking about how much they can fleece advertising agencies to enter them, and start doing looking at it other ways. I mean, a good example of that, I think, is that when you, if you entered an award show and it was free to enter, like Busan, if you then won 4 Grand Prix and Agency of the Year, you have to pay a huge amount of money because of all of those awards that you entered won. I don't know any agency in the world that would begrudge paying that money. The issue comes in advertising when agencies just burn money and never win anything. And then, okay, you've got a network who'll prop you up and it becomes one of those big network arms races. But I think to democratize award shows, don't charge to enter them, but charge if you win.
Okay, so that's your solution to the whole thing.
Well, it's not the whole thing, but it's not a bad idea. I mean, actually, Campaign Brief do it with the work.
Yeah.
It's free to enter. If you win, you have to pay to be in their annual. Talk to Kim, talk to Michael. No one ever goes, I'm not paying that money. They go, wow, I've got 5 pages in an annual, I'll pay that money. You know, it's one way of doing it. I'm not saying it's the answer. No. I was talking to the executives, judges about it yesterday. My only piece of advice is, well, a couple of things. One, if you've got something that's really great, it will probably win. That doesn't mean you should enter it into 15 categories in an award show, because after a while, juries start hating on it. Think of your favorite movie. If you had to watch your favorite movie 5 times in a row, you'd start getting really bored of it. So I don't think enough thought goes into that. I think sometimes what happens, the people who get it right enter something amazing 3 or 4 times. So when it comes up again, you're really excited about seeing it. I don't know if many clients know this, that when you're on a jury, if you see one case study and it comes up again, people go, yeah, I don't need to see that again. So automatically, you're devaluing that idea if it's in about 15 times. Do you see what I mean? So I think that kind of scattergun, kind of like, you know, elephant gun kind of thing is a bad idea. My other advice to clients and agencies alike is like, choose the category carefully. I mean, for me, the skill of winning is to go, you know what? I've got this great idea for a hearing aid. We're actually doing something for a hearing aid now. It goes into a healthcare section, which means it's going to be easier to win probably than film, right? So there's a sort of a logic to categories that I wish more agencies would kind of stick to, which is to go, you know, find the pointiest category that's the most relevant to your idea. That doesn't happen, hardly ever. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's dumb. I joined Saatchi Saatchi 2 weeks before the ban came out. Artur, you know, he dropped it on everyone at Cannes. Obviously, everyone remembers this, 2017. I think there were a lot of questions asked when that went down. I think in hindsight, it was a brilliant move. Now, for me, it was perfect, because I think when you walk into any agency, if you're suddenly playing the game of winning awards and, you know, what have we got and what are we doing, you know, I believe that awards happen at the end of a process. You go to an agency, you hire the right people, you build a culture, you build trust with your clients, you start doing the great work, and then the awards just happen. If you try and force awards to happen, they don't happen. I mean, Marcel, just to be clear, is a good idea. Marcel is a platform. It's not a, you know, a lot of people were cynical about it. The hiring of Nick Law suggests I would say to the world that we are actually quite serious about.
Cool.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, and he wouldn't be joining if he didn't feel that this was a great idea. And I mean, Marcel and Nick Law are obviously linked because that's his background too. So, you know, he's made a big thing out of that. I think he wants to make publicists far more of an experience business whereby, you know, you're using technology, you're using a creativity, you're applying data in clever ways to create this very kind of joined up network. Except we don't call it networks anymore. I think we're going to try and call it a platform because it's super trendy to call it a platform. But I think it's a good idea. So for me now entering awards, yes, I'm doing it, but I'm not, you know, again, there are too many award shows on the planet. I don't have an inexhaustible budget. I'd rather do 2 or 3 beautiful pieces of work every year and
enter that.
yeah, because I think, you know, the moment, as I said, you start chasing awards is really, you know, like there's a lack of dignity involved in that I'm not big on. Every time I'm in Asia and every time I see Asian work, I'm so in awe of art direction. And there's some beautiful skills at play. I think some of the digital, I mean, I've seen some most exquisite ideas, you know, through apps and AR as well. So it's not like there isn't talent in Asia. One of the scourges of advertising that I'm going to talk to in my speech this week is the case study. There was a time, Angel, where we would be judged, our idea would be judged on it being an idea. Now our idea is judged on a 2-minute case study. And I think once you have to play that game, there are certain people who are good at it and there are certain people who need to keep up. I would say, and I'm generalizing massively, that Asia needs to do some work in terms of how to do storytelling in case studies. I think, you know, there are issues sometimes when I look at case studies where too much information is thrown in. It's very dry. You know, for me, it's all about what you don't say in a case study more than about what you do. So you need people to feel inspired by the idea, and the more effortless the storytelling is, the more people love the idea. It's an absolute fact. Well, it is an art form because it's about reductionism. It's about actually taking things out. And I look at, you know, who are the originators of the case study would be Droga 5, right? And, you know, I've been judging with Matty Burden this week, who worked on some of those amazing projects in New York, and he told me about 20 edits, months of work, and lots of animation, and lots of head hours, and time written off to get to this beautiful work of art. Now, it kind of works for Droga 5 because Droga 5's background, its very genesis was about projects. It wasn't about, you know, taking on a brand and being the custodian of that brand. It would be like, you give me a specific business problem, I will give you a solution. And that really lends itself to a case study. Do you know what I mean? I think, you know, if you're a full service agency looking after a telco, you know, you're not going to be doing case studies for everything, but I look at those case studies and I still think that's kind of a benchmarking kind of exercise in effortlessness, you know. Storytelling, not everyone's a great storyteller, you know, like not everyone can tell a joke. But I think for me, what I absolutely love about a great case study is, as I said, it's more about what you don't say, and it's more about the fact that you are drawing your own conclusions after you've even finished looking at that case study. You go, my God, that just blew my mind, because I thought of all these things that you could do with that idea, rather than going on about those media impressions and all of those magazines that it's run in, that has done PR on it. And if I hear the words "world first" one more time, I'll kill myself. You know, so there's a lot of cliches. And I you know, we've all made that mistake. Yeah. But I think you need to learn from those mistakes. And I would say if there's one thing that I see in Asian case studies, it's almost like too much. It's like overload. When you say many players, you're talking, I presume, about the Accentures and the PwCs and the media people. Yeah, look, you know, all that says to me is that everyone wants to be a creative, but not everyone can be a creative. So I look at management consultancies. You know, even the name management consultancies suggests to me that there's nothing remotely creative about that, because what they do, if I think of PwC and Deloitte, they are people who come from an accountancy background, who do deep dives into businesses, who understand, they know where all the bodies are buried, they understand every aspect of that business, but what they don't really know what to do is to take all that data and do something creative with it.
But they want to.
Well, and their way of doing it, well, that's what, they'll hire creative people, they'll buy agencies like the Monkeys, But you know, for me, that's just part of the evolution of advertising. It doesn't mean that advertising is going to go and management consultancies are going to kind of, that's the future. It's like they pay big money for creativity. You know, creativity for me, it's a bit like, you know, it's the price of gold. You know, like it's very, very, very sought after. The advertising industry is hopeless at protecting itself. It's its own worst enemy. It panics, it does really silly things. It tries to invent businesses that don't really exist just so that it can retain that little part of that client's thing. If advertising agencies just say we are ideas shops and we come up with beautiful ideas for our clients, no one would argue with that. It's when advertising agencies pretend to be Deloitte or Accenture or PwC that it fails. Be true to yourself. If you're an advertising agency, you have amazing talent in your building that can transform a brand. Better than anyone else can transform a brand. Know that, nurture that, retain that. And if you want to get bought by PwC or, you know, whoever, fantastic, make your money. But know that you'll never want to be them. And the moment you do become them, you devalue yourself so much that people won't come to you anymore. So I think creative people need to be reminded constantly that it's a really good thing. You know, like, let's stop pretending that we're not, or that we're not, or that we're technologists, or that we're this, or we're that. We're creative. We have ideas, and I feel really strongly about it because I see so many of my friends who've gone. They've taken the king shilling and they've gone to work for Facebook where they're basically a glorified rep, right? Okay, sorry to say it, but that's what they are. Now, I know people at Google who aren't, who are far more on the tools and coming up with ideas, but I think a lot of those businesses as well, they just want to be agencies. It's really good to remind agencies that actually people want to be you, so stop wanting to be them.